Welcome to Season 1 of the PMO Community Podcast series. I'm Aina Live, and I'm thrilled to guide you through another thought-provoking conversation as a part of our book writing challenge, which focuses on PMO evolution and trace of a new role, a Chief Project Officer. And today, I am thrilled to be joined by Dimitry Shlyonsky, a proven executive with a strong track record in managing global PMOs, large-scale ERP programs, and driving ServiceNow and sustainability initiatives. Dimitry is also the creator of the P3O Personas Framework, which categorizes project managers and helps organizations assign the right people to the right projects. In this episode, we will explore how the P3O Personas Framework improves project outcomes and career progressions, the evolving role of the Chief Project Officer and its impact on strategic decision-making, how change trajectory improves communication across the teams, real-life examples of project managers transitioning from work package managers to more strategic roles, the importance of financial tracking and mentorship in building high-performance teams, and how the P3O Personas framework is adapting to support remote teams and agile methodologies in digital era. So join us as Dimitri shares invaluable insights on leadership, mentorship, and the future of PMOs in a rapidly evolving business landscape. Hi, Dimitri. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Aina. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I read your chapter and I was excited to ask you more about P3O Personas because you are the only one book contributor who chose this topic. So, Dimitri, P3O Personas provide a structured way to categorize project managers. Can you share a real-world example of how this framework has improved project outcomes in any organization?
Sure. So what I found in my experience with PMOs is that it's when you have a new project, the parameters of the project will really drive the type of project manager that should be assigned to it. And even though a lot of the time just a sort of warm body that's available drives the assignment of a project, ideally we want to get PMOs to the point where skills are considered and we are placing project managers with the right skill set with the right project. So P3O Personas is the evolution of that intent, trying to evaluate what project managers have done in the past and then categorize them in different ways so that you can fit them into the correct project. An example that I would make is a new project manager that's just starting out are probably more of a work package manager. So you don't really want to give them large projects. You want to give them the smaller work that isn't as complex and give them a chance to cut their teeth. As a project manager progresses through their career, there are different skills that they pick up. And even a project manager that has spent decades in a career may not have picked up the less frequent skills such as financial management. Financial management, I would say, is quite rare, and the reality is that not all projects require financial management. So if a PM never really had to manage a budget, then the odds are their financial management skills aren't very strong. And certain projects, especially the larger ones, and as you progress from large project to program to portfolio, then financial management is critical. So that's, I would say, a key skill that is very difficult to learn if you haven't been doing it in your career.
I totally agree, especially knowing that I don't have strong financial background myself. So every time when I read the job description and if I see that they required project managers for a financial project, I just simply don't go because I don't have the skills. And that's why I agree with what you just said. But it's not just about the skills, it's also about the career, because we know that career progression through PMO sometimes is not linear at all. So
Yes.
could you discuss a specific case where a project manager successfully transitioned from like his or her current role or like as a work package manager to a more strategic role, for example, like a portfolio manager?
Sure. So, to be honest, I would say I know several examples, very few of them successful, but I can think of one that was, and it's a mentee that I've had for a very long time, and it started a long time ago. I would say, when was this? Probably around 2016. So at this point, let's say about 8 years ago, I was working in a large company, a software company, in the professional services division, and we were looking for new project managers. We wanted to bring in some new blood. So there was someone that was working as a project manager in the digital space, which was separate to professional services. It was a different department altogether, and it was going through some restructuring. So they were looking to find new homes for the people that work there. They didn't really do project management per se within that department, but there was one person that was very interested in project management, and she had even done like event management and pursued her PMP in event management with her sister, and applied project management skills to event management, and then also tried to incorporate it to the work that she was doing in digital. So I interviewed with her, and or she interviewed with me, and I really liked her background. I felt that I saw a spark there, and we ended up, I remember having the conversation with my manager at the time, who led the department, and I said, I really like her, but she doesn't have the experience. She's never really managed projects the way that we understand it. And my manager encouraged me to go with my gut. So I brought her onto the team and started her on small projects. So essentially, she started as a work package manager. She really took to everything that we were doing, structured project management, professional services delivery, difficult clients. She demonstrated many skills out of the gate. She's developed those skills through her uh, sort of extracurricular activities, the event management that she was doing outside of her previous role, and task management. She nailed it. uh, Relationship management, she was very good. Financial management was more or less new, but she picked it up very quickly and adeptly, even better than people far more experienced than her. And eventually I moved out of the role that I had. She continued on. And at this point, I know that she has a portfolio management role where she's a senior director managing a large group of people. And she uses all of the skills that she acquired over the course of, a relatively short period of time. Um, that's an uncommon situation, but a great success story.
Yeah, it's always great to hear about someone's success stories because they're always so inspiring. So, but I still want to come back to your previous comment about the financial skills and financial tracking. So, let's elaborate a little bit more on that. So, Dimitry, can you explain how financial tracking plays a critical role in project success, and also referencing the financial manager case study from your chapter? Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So in my chapter, I think I used the case study of somebody that I really tried to mentor, and with financial management, it had never really worked out. And that's one of the challenging things with financial management. I think that you really have to have a certain mindset for it. And what it really drills down to for me is something years ago at Accenture we called the resource load. And for me, that's what stuck. So it's a spreadsheet, right, of the roles, of the cost or uh, whatever, the money associated to each role by week for the duration of the project. And it's about trying to predict how much it's going to cost. And then, of course, the fixed cost as well. So CapEx, OpEx, let's say is a sort of section underneath the resources, and that amounts to the total costs for the project. So when you begin the project, you want to have an estimate for what it's going to take to complete. And that's what you're approved for from a budgetary perspective. Then as you go through the project, it's necessary to update this on a regular basis with the actuals as they come in. And depending on the flow of the project, the schedule of the project, it may progress at the rate that you expected, faster or slower. There might be new things that come up, and we know this as project managers. And what comes to mind is, you sort of plan for the straight path, but it's a winding road going up and down. So the ups and downs are plotted to the financial resource plan, resource and fixed cost plan. And you also reforecast each time. So if you thought you were going to use $100 in the first week and you only use 20, then $80 moves forward. And it becomes really challenging to find the different points where the actuals have come together and what that does to the remainder, mixed together with the schedule. It creates a view of where you're going to go into the future. And as you can imagine, on smaller projects, that's easier. And that's why smaller projects, work package managers, that's how you begin the financial tracking, and then develop those skills and the understanding. As you progress and you start to do the same thing for larger projects. Also, an important sort of metric that I found, the number of hours is a great way to gauge how big a project is. So, 100 hours, 500 hours, 1,000 hours total effort for the work. I find large projects really start at around 10,000 hours or close to that. And then once you exceed 10,000 hours, those are definitely programs and need to be managed accordingly. So it's harder to do financial management for those larger projects. And if you are trying to manage a 10,000 hour project financials and you've never successfully managed a 2,000 hour financials project, then the likelihood of success is not high. So that's where the experiential component comes into play. There's natural aptitude for financial management, and then there is the experience that helps you to develop those muscles. And if you haven't done either, and you haven't really gone through the progression, and you're dropped into the middle of a 10,000 hour project, there is not a high probability that you're going to understand how to do it successfully. And if you're not managing the finances properly, then likely the project has a much lower chance of success. Now, the alternative, and this is something that I'm exploring now and throughout my career, is a shared service model where understanding that financial management is an uncommon skill, It's necessary for the PMO to set up shared services so that project managers don't have to manage finances. Maybe they have to manage the effort hours, but not the money related to that. And that is a way to compensate for the fact that financial management skills are uncommon. And I still feel that as you progress through the career of a project manager, from work package manager to program manager to portfolio manager, you have to have that progressive experience on financial management. Otherwise, it's the same thing as a work package manager being dropped into a 10,000 hour project.
Yes, and now we are going through the digital transformation, and also there are many like hybrid roles related to Agile. So it's not clearly project management sometimes, or it's not clearly Agile. And in Agile, we don't manage a budget, which is great, like when you just enter in or doing the career transition. Because again, my personal example, I didn't have financial background, but it didn't stop me to pivot to Agile roles. But now I feel like I would like to have this skill under my tool belt, but I don't. So I probably need to pivot again to gain the skill and then come back to Agile. But all of this leads me to my next question to you, Dimitry. So as I said, PMOs evolve with digital transformation. So how do you see that like the P3O Personas framework you mentioned adapting to support remote teams and Agile methodologies?
So I think that with remote teams, it just becomes a little more challenging to identify the skills that people have, and an assessment needs to be done of a team of project managers to identify who has done what. When I come in as a PMO lead, I really start to evaluate each project manager based on the performance they have on the projects that they deliver. And it's a little harder remotely because, for instance, relationship management would be one example that's much easier to gauge when you're spending time in person. People are different in person than they are online. And having the opportunity to come together in person is really extremely important. The last several PMO roles that I've had have been global, which makes it even harder to meet people in person. And as we are no longer co-located, especially for projects and global projects, it becomes that much more challenging. So you have to spend time with project managers to perform a capability assessment of some kind, and also sort of build the PMO awareness of folks that can assess PMs and identify development paths, work with their line managers if it's not in the direct line management for the PMO, in order to develop those skills. And I think that having really a subway map, essentially, is the way that I would describe it. The P3O personas help to identify sort of who is capable of what, give them the appropriate projects so the PMO is succeeding, and also giving PMs the opportunity to develop skills in a safe way, assign mentors so that the mentors can work with PMs in order to develop skills. Relationship management is a great example where that is very innate, but it could be that, people are introverts. And I think that P3O personas is closely related to like a Myers-Briggs assessment, where the type of personality also it develops over time, but an introvert, as an example, could be coached to become more extroverted. And I think that extroverts make better relationship managers. And as you become more senior, relationship management is extremely important. But a relationship manager that's able to do work package management and financial management is well positioned to be a program manager, right? And then once they have that opportunity, remote or otherwise, it smoothly flows into the next step. Now, I've seen project managers parachuted into the portfolio manager role, and the result is confusion. So it just takes a little bit longer, and quite honestly, it also depends. It takes time to see what's going to happen in terms of their success in the role. So then it's necessary to set up a shared service like I was talking about to support the people that are maybe parachuted into roles by necessity so that they have the support they need in order to succeed. Now, when you layer agile methodologies into all of this, it's an interesting situation because, Aina, I would say your experience is common and also interesting for me. And why I say that is because from an agile perspective, and I would say many have this challenge, um, having a budget and doing as much as you can with that budget makes it very hard to, if you look at things from the triple constraint, determine when the customer is going to get what they want. And ultimately, that's a money problem, right? So by decoupling the money problem from agile methodologies, I think it becomes interesting because then you can just focus on delivery of whatever the outcome for the project is intended to be. But then at some point, someone has to deal with the money problem, right? And how the organization deals with the money problem, and if that's dealt with well, is probably the PMO's responsibility. So my experience has been more with like hybrid approaches to agile, where you sort of have the sandwich of waterfall on the outside and agile in the middle. So execution is performed in an agile way, but it's still necessary to have a good grasp of the triple constraint so that when everything comes together, maybe during system integration testing for technology projects, or when it's not technology, still some sort of integration testing. And at that point, you continue on in a waterfall fashion. So in today's world, I would say that project managers need to be very aware of all different types of delivery and be nimble in adapting to the environment and the project that they have. So as an example, I find that infrastructure projects are probably not going to be very agile. Construction projects are not going to be agile. And custom development can be agile, but commercial off the shelf is, from my experience with ServiceNow and other products, it is definitely more of a hybrid. So as a PM, there are a lot of different factors that need to be considered. And from a PMO perspective, that's assigning those PMs to those projects, you kind of want to have a sense of who's capable of what and who's ready for a stretch role. And that's made more complex by everyone being remote, but you still need to identify who is capable of what, who is ready for the next bit, and ultimately, at the end of the day, delivering on time and on budget is paramount. So that's what the focus should be on, as well as strategic objectives. Also externally, I would say sustainability as a great example. That's an important part of sort of my DNA in recent years. As project managers, we need to make sure that we're delivering in a sustainable way. And the UN SDG goals may also influence the overall PMO focus and company objectives. So in some way, they will also filter down and become constraints on who is the right project manager for a project, because it may be, for instance, with a data center move, you want to make sure you're greening your data centers. And, does the PM understand what that means? Do they need ramp up? Money is also an interesting point, because probably you want to sort of apply a filter on how much it costs versus the long-term cost, the sustainability impact onto the environment. Something recently that I've gotten wind of is with the carbon offsets companies are going to be paying for decisions that are not carbon friendly. And that will probably really drive business decisions in the future. So that's one example of something that's going to change in the near term.
Thank you, Dimitry. And my last question for you today is about the specific role, Chief Project Officer. So with the rise of the Chief Project Officer, what do you see as the biggest challenge and opportunity for project managers aspiring to enter the C-suite?
Well, I would say, it's interesting because when you say project managers entering the C-suite, I would say project managers cannot. I think from a P3O persona perspective, you have to travel through the different roles. And realistically, a portfolio manager with a lot of experience and a great reputation would be in a position to be an executive. And as an executive, you have the opportunity to enter the C-suite, right? But even an executive is not part of the C-suite. So that linear progression in some cases is really paramount. And a project, I have heard stories. I'll tell you one that's interesting. I worked for a government agency in the late 2000s and 2008. And there was urban myth about how the CIO of that government agency was a contract project manager in Toronto. And then the previous CIO, and for many years, maybe a couple of decades, he was a contract PM. And then when the CIO role opened up, he jumped into it. And I knew the CIO, I worked in his organization, but that's the only time I've ever heard anything like that. And to be quite honest, the organization ran the way that you would imagine a person like that would run it. In today's world, not possible, I would say. And that's good that it isn't possible. So from a project management perspective, I think you need to, although we are all project managers at heart, no matter how high or low we ascend along the ladder, project management being broken down into skills and experience, that's what's going to drive the chief project officer role. Because as everything becomes more and more projectized, we definitely need some clear representation at the C-suite. But that the two most important, I would say, components to that are relationship management and financial management. Having a keen eye for organizational movement, which is maybe outside of those things, is also important. Communication skills, of course. There's a variety of things that project managers have to develop along the way in order to truly be ready for the C-suite. And especially a chief project officer role, which doesn't really exist, right? The chief project officer role in its early days, as there will be some, in the future, is really going to have to be led by those shining examples like the one I gave you, where in an 8-year period, someone that was pretty much barely a task manager turned into a portfolio manager and leader, for a large organization. It's those types of folks that are really, I think, going to have to break the barrier and get the chief project officers to the C-suite table and then lead the way for the rest. And the only way that I see that happening is going through the progression of the P3O personas and demonstrate what we can do by sitting at the C-suite table and making sure that we adapt to the changing environment and deliver on time and on budget at a departmental level, which is, a level above portfolio.
That was very powerful, Dimitry. And on this note, let's say Thank you for all our audience for tuning in to the PMO Community Podcast for this enlightening discussion with Dimitry Shlyonsky. And also a special thanks to our volunteers at the PMO Community Podcast for making this episode possible. And stay tuned for more captivating insights and interviews for our upcoming episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated. And if you find this episode valuable, please remember to like and share it. And feel free to reach out to me, Aina Live, on LinkedIn with any questions or requests. And for all of the latest updates, make sure to follow us on our social media, such as LinkedIn page, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Samsung, Amazon Music. Be updated. Take care.
Bye, everyone.